Welcome, everybody, to our next episode of Sweet Home Catoosa. I'm your host, Richard Thorp, and you know what? Today's episode kind of touches my life a little bit, and I think it's going to touch a lot of lives out there. Emily from Rosewood down in Fort Oglethorpe has been kind enough today to come talk to us about some things that affects all of us in our lives. I'll be up front right now, Emily, and you didn't know this, and we just came on air, but my mother is in a nursing home. And my stepfather's right there with her, and he suffers from dementia, essentially. And his case got kind of bad here within the last probably year. And he was her caregiver in a sense. He would go every day and sit with her and all that, but his dementia came on so fast that we ended up, it was just best for him, and he wanted to be with her, so he's now there with her. So I'm living this right now. And a lot of folks, I think, out there, like I was telling you a minute ago, I had a person reach out to me this morning from the commissioner side of the fence that I'm on, and we got to talking, and she says, I'm the caregiver for my husband at home, and he suffers from dementia. So this topic today, and I appreciate you coming from Rosewood, and you've got an event you're going to talk about, but this is something that really, it touches all of us at one point or another most of the time as we all get older. And, I just didn't think about it. It's kind of like one of these things like life insurance. You really just don't ever think about it until you need it. But it's one of those things that you're glad you have it when the need arrives. And so thank you for coming today to talk to us, because it's been a struggle and a journey for my sister. My sister's 5 years older than me, and it's been a struggle going and navigating this journey about how to, their assets they have and what they need. I mean, it's just been an absolute journey, and there was no roadmap. We've kind of had to try to figure this out, and her more than me. And so thank you for coming.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And you're right. You kind of got to put your own plan together. Whenever people become parents, the joke is that you're not given a manual, and quite frankly, the same can be said for your parents when they start to age, is you're not given a manual. You just hope that in the moment you can figure it out or have the right contacts to put it together. And that's honestly why we wanted to put this event together. It's just called Navigating Aging, actually. So Navigating Aging is an elder care expert Q&A event. So the idea is we wanted to bring all these professionals. We'll have 7 professionals in one house or under one roof talking about ways that you can help prepare for this, whether you're in the beginning stages, parents are fine, loved ones are fine, or if you're right where you are, where you're right in the throes of it, or even as you're starting to notice that things are winding down, how do you prepare for that ending chapter? Because again, like you said, no one just instinctively knows what the next step is. And usually you have to ask a whole bunch of people to be able to put together that roadmap. So we wanted to have a bunch of people together that can actually help you put that roadmap together for you.
Yeah, because one of the things that we started with, obviously, we had questions upon questions upon questions. So, when they transitioned from, my mother went to the nursing home first. And so, there's all these forms and things you've got to fill out, and all these qualifying things that you have no idea that you'd even have to deal with. But then all of a sudden, when they were both in there, we're left with their house and their assets and how to transition that and the cost of everything. And so if we had something like this and we had known that we were going to be in this situation where we could come and sit down with an attorney, a dementia care specialist, you've got an expert financial planner, assisted living executive director, skilled nursing admissions director, hospice care specialist, and funeral services professional, all in one roof that you're going to have at this event, that would have helped so much with us, because trying to figure it out as you go, I can tell you, it was a struggle. It's been a real big struggle. And so, yeah, I think this was great. And so when you reached out, I'm like, there's folks sitting out there just like me. They're just trying to figure it out without a map, and it's difficult. So tell us about your facility down there in Fort Oglethorpe.
Well, we're Rosewood, Fort Oglethorpe, and we house 4 different communities. We offer independent living, we offer personal care community, an assisted living, and actually we do offer memory care as well. We've been doing a dementia support group just because I don't think I've ever met one person who said, yeah, I've never been affected by Alzheimer's or dementia. I think if you talk to somebody, there's at least somebody in their lives that's touched them who's had dementia or Alzheimer's. And with our communities, we try our best to offer whatever level of care you need, and hence the independent living to the memory care. So with personal care specifically, we're actually very proud of that program because it's a unique one. It offers the bridge between independent living as well as assisted living, because you're starting to notice that you're needing a little bit of extra help, but you're not ready for the full-on supports. And that's where we kind of bring in personal care to keep your independence, because even in all communities, our biggest goal is to keep everybody independent. And again, that's kind of what brought up this idea for this, is we want our families and the public as well to be educated on what their next steps are. We want them to feel as independent, as in charge, as in control. And we try to do that for our families and our communities already. But when it comes to the public who has no idea even how to broach the subject, that's how we bring this in.
Yeah, I think it's great. You're talking about you've got 4 different programs under one roof, and my mind was going, it would have been so much easier had we known where the journey was going, for them to have moved in, and they could still come and go. They're there, but they've got a little bit of independence. And then as things progressed, which is what they did, now all of a sudden, they're basically in that same facility, but the care changes. Right. Where they're not independent anymore. Now they've got to have somebody kind of coming in there and doing more care. That would have been phenomenal to kind of step your way into it, because that was the tough struggle. He was getting in car accidents, because he wanted to be independent, and he was taking care of my mother, and that was his sole purpose, And my sister would get a call, because this is down in Tallahassee, Florida, where I was from. She'd get a call and say, hey, he's in the parking lot here, and he's run into a vehicle. And the signs were there, but the struggle was he didn't want to give up his independence, and he felt like, I've got to do this for her, and I've got to be there for her. But we had neighbors that would call and say he backed into our mailbox, and you get to that point, right, where you're like, we've got to take his keys, right? I mean, it's not safe for him to be driving, but it's not safe for the public to be driving. And boy, that's a hard thing to do. That was a real struggle.
It's a very emotional conversation, and any point at this is very emotional and very difficult. And I think part of it is it's our parents. For the most part, it's usually our parents. These are the ones who gave us our car keys to teach us how to drive. These are the ones who taught us our life lessons. These are the people who guided us through every step of life. But then in the moment where we feel like we really need their help, it's us who's needing to help them. And whenever it happens like that, it's difficult to kind of switch the roles. And I will say that's one of the things that I love the most about working in assisted living and working at Rosewood is we try to keep the adult children. We try to step in so that they don't have to parent their parent.
Right.
Because, like you said, those conversations are so hard. They're so painful. And whenever we do, that was actually one of the common questions that brought this up, is I had a couple of people ask me, how do you have this conversation when my mom, who has dementia, does not want to do this? She doesn't realize she has dementia, but I can't care for her. We had so many stories of loved ones ending up in the closet, or, hey, they were in a car accident, or their medications got messed up and we almost had an overdose on our hands. I mean, there's so many conversations that lead to, I need some professional help. And then I think there's the part about the adult children starting to feel guilty, because they feel like, kind of like whenever you become a parent, I should know what to do. This is my baby. This is my parent. I should know how to take care of them. I know their wishes. But similar to the baby, you don't get a manual. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to professionals who their sole goal is to make sure that you have peace of mind and that you have the resources to make the most educated decisions.
Yeah, and one of those things is time, right? So they give all their time, and as a parent, you give all your time to your children growing up, because that's your focus. You're like, I'm all in. And then we get older, and then we have our own families, and so we're all in on that. And then all of a sudden, the focus tends to shift now in our latter years. Maybe we've got our children grown, but now all of a sudden, we're having to go in this other direction. We're having to help our parents, because you said so many things there, like yeah, we have a parent that calls and says, my blood pressure is really low. And so we have to take them to the ER. And you start to think to yourself, did they take their medicine, right? And the reality is they probably took it, then they forgot, and they took it again. Mm-hmm. And so those are the things. And so we try to help along the way, and we're like, look, we got them day packed, Monday AM, Monday PM, and you do all those things because, and it's a struggle, right? Because when you step in and start doing those things, they're kind of, it offends them almost in a way, right? Like, I can do this. I don't need you to do this. But you know there's a help that needs to be there, but they haven't identified that yet. And if they have, they just don't want to say, I understand. One of my favorite songs, and it really hits, is Sawyer Brown. They're a country band. And he talks about the long, winding driveway, and he's walking his son for the first day of school down the driveway. And, you know, he's like, I've been down this road before. And, you know, he's telling the son, it's going to be all right, and you can go to school, and I'll be here when you get home. And then by the third verse of the song that comes in, he's walking down the driveway with his father, and he's taking him to that next care, that nursing home in a sense. And his father looks at him and says, I understand. I've been down this road before too. And it really hits you, you know, because that is our stages of life, right? We raise our kids and we're there, and the next thing you know, that role is all reversed, and it's tough. I can just tell you, it's tough.
I can agree with that. My husband and I were actually talking just yesterday about my dad and his wife are taking care of my grandmother right now, and I was talking to my husband about, you know, I wish I could do more. Just, he lives about an hour and a half away, so I'm not able to help as much as I would like. But I wish there was more I could do with him to help. And my husband was like, well, we're doing the best we can. And if it makes you feel any better, it'll be our turns eventually. And it's true. You sit there knowing that you're going to give them your best. You're going to love them as much as you can. And then eventually be your turn to be loved. And it'll be your turn to be cared for. And that's actually one of the things that I know that will be talked about at this event is talking about what the wishes are before it gets to a point where you can't ask them. So hospice actually wanted to talk about that a little bit of if you know that there's a chance that you have dementia or you're starting to show early signs, going ahead and talking about what are some levels of care that you would like to discuss. And even with the funeral arrangements, I had one person talk to me last week actually. She talked to me last week and said that the best gift her dad gave her was prearranging his funeral because it was already a heartbreaking event. She was an absolute daddy's girl, but whenever it was time, he had everything in place. All she had to do was basically sign her name and say, yes, this is what we're doing. And honestly, through every single one of these experts, they want to ask, what does your loved one want to do? What do you want to do? And finally, what do y'all need? What does this person need to feel safe, to be taken care of? What do you need for peace of mind? And like you were mentioning earlier, to also keep your family in perspective. So many caregivers allow themselves to be burnout on both ends, where they're so busy, they want to care for their aging loved ones, but they also want to still be at the soccer game. They still want to go to their kids' play. So how do you do both? And again, I think a lot of caregivers tend to isolate themselves with the idea of, I can do it, they're my loved one, they're my responsibility, and they don't even realize how many local resources, because every one of these experts on here is local. Every one of these people are willing to share resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the thing is, the resources matter. And you said something there that makes a lot of sense too, is wouldn't you want to have this conversation now while they can participate in this conversation where they can say, you know, yeah, I wouldn't want to be in this situation, or I wouldn't want you to have to overload yourself with this. I would want you to kind of go this direction because I never want to be in a situation where I'm making it harder for you. But to have those conversations before that loved one gets a little too far down that road is absolutely the right thing to do. I know you and everybody probably, we've all seen the movie The Notebook, right? And, when I watched that movie for the first time, we're watching the love story and we're getting all that. And it wasn't clicking until the end when James Garner's sitting there and they're having those conversations and she comes back, right? Because he's reading her every day. He's reading that diary, reading that story. And every day, and some days she just comes back, but it was so touching. But that just showed, even as strong a bond as they had, dementia just got a hold. And it just took her away. But that story right there just drives home the struggle for sure. He was right there every day with her. And that's what we all picture in the Hollywood perfect movie. That is the reality we'd all like to be in, but that's not the reality we do live in. We all have lives and other things going on, and so we need help. And so that's why you're having this event, and that's great. So most of the time, first thing folks come to is cost. So talk to folks about that because, there's different insurance types of things or if they're lower income. So let's talk about that because I know that's just what most people think. Well, it sounds great, but what's the cost of that? And can I afford it? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Honestly, I think that's another big reason of why we started this off. One of the first people I asked, would you participate in this, is a financial planner.
Right.
Because whenever people start looking at assisted livings or skilled nursing, I think they have the assumption that insurance will pay for it. And that's not always the case. For assisted living, majority of the time, it's private pay. With skilled nursing, usually Medicare, Medicaid could come in, but then there's a list of qualifications, as I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Sure, right. And if you've got so many assets, so like they have a house and they have other assets, and they're like, look, for them to come in here and do this, here's the cost, but we can't do that with them having these assets over here. So now we're having to go through and liquidate things and sell and move over. But they weren't going to need the house anymore. They weren't coming back home. But it took a while to get there. So she was in there first and he was at home still. Right. And so there was the cost for her to be in there. But then when he went into the same facility, now we're in the process right now of liquidating those assets. But here again, we had to talk to an attorney, how much, and it's just so hard to get into on your own without a way to know because the facility kind of guided us a little bit. Mm-hmm. But they can only, it's like coming down to the county and saying, I need help with, I want to put a septic tank in my yard, just to give a broad example. And they'll say, well, you need to have a perk test to see if the ground will absorb all that. And they give you a list. And here's 10 people you can call. Mm-hmm. And when you start calling down that list, I'm 2 months out, I'm a month out. Don't even get an answer from this one. And so that's kind of where we were at. Here's some lawyers or here's some people to call. But when you start going down that list, it's not just as easy as somebody picking up the phone and just being there for you. It was a struggle to get down there. So having somebody at this event is huge, right? To have somebody that can really sit there and talk to you and say, here's kind of the path and here's where you go. And let's ask you some qualifying questions, right. Where are you at financially and all that. But I guess at the end of the day, there's no set number where you could say, because everybody's circumstances are different, And
that's one of the things at Rosewood, too, whenever people call for a price. I'm happy to give you some pricing, but I'm going to have to get to know you a little bit first because we just have different levels of care. And I know that as far as we're concerned, we're not a cookie cutter approach. We want to make sure you're getting the care that's individualized to you. Are you needing this service? Are you needing this service? Et cetera, et cetera. And I think that everyone that's on this panel as well is very much similar. They're very aware that there's not a single person who has the same situation, whether it be their family situation, whether it be their financial situation. Everyone's so uniquely different. And that's part of what these people are ready to help out with. And the way that we have it set up is it's going to be just an open panel Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, they can just raise their hand, ask it away. If they can listen to other people and their questions as well. And even if they don't feel comfortable raising their hand, because goodness knows I'm shy, so right. I'm not going to be the person who raises my hand, but there's going to be someone there who will take your note and will ask the question for you. So it doesn't matter what types of questions you have, it'll get asked. And again, like you were saying earlier, you have this whole list of people you're going to call. We didn't want you to have to worry about setting up a whole bunch of appointments. Rather than making 7 special appointments with all these different people in all these various stages of elder care, let's just come for one night. It's completely free. One night, with food and ask whatever you need so that you can walk away more educated and with some good contact information too. So if you think of a question later, you have their information right off the bat and you can say, hey, I went to this Navigating Aging Elder Care Q&A. You were there. You were very helpful and insightful. I didn't ask this. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think memory care now especially has become such a topic of conversation because it seems like there's a rise of it. My father will turn 83 in November, and that's a blessing obviously for him to be around, but his mother died from dementia, and he said he's noticed, and when I talk to him, he'll tell me a story he might have told me a couple months ago from his childhood or whatever, and I know that he told me that story, but I don't tell him, you told me that about a month ago, right? Because you don't want to make him feel bad. And it's just great to be able to talk to him. But, he's showing little signs, right? But I think now that's become more prevalent in society. I don't know why. I'm sure scientists have all kind of things figured out about what's really made this kind of become more prevalent. But at the end of the day, those are the ones that are so tough. Because if I can't physically get around, I'm mentally still here, but physically my body's not able to go, and I can go into a home and be cared for or whatever. That's one thing, but it's that memory care, because you mentioned it earlier. They get angry. It's just so hard because I guess, they're trapped inside of themselves almost. And so that kind of care is a struggle for sure.
It is. Definitely. First of all, that's your loved one that you're seeing behave in a way that you would have never. I can't tell you how many times that I've had people talk about just watching their loved one behave completely different. We've all heard the story of, well, she was a sweetheart of a saint herself, but man, she cusses like a sailor now. Or just the stories of, he's so agitated, but he was such a gentle man before. It's scary and very heartbreaking when dementia takes a hold of your loved one. And at first, I think a lot of people feel even more protective of them because I know at least for me, I've had a lot of dementia in my family personally. And I know that there's the protective nature of, I need you to know how he was before, or I need to tell you what she was like before this happened. But I think one thing that I have found the most comforting about memory care is those people are still there.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we like to say that they're lost to the disease, and I've had too many examples to show that's not true. I think a lot of it really is regarding the care that they receive, getting to know who they were before they got sick, learning about what their habits were, what their hobbies were, what brought them joy, what pictures, and sometimes it means having a conversation 5 times in a row the same day. And that's okay because for that brief moment, they're there. They're happy. And I heard somebody explain it to me one time of, usually in dementia, that means you're in your sunset years. And that's okay, because sunset's a very beautiful time. And your goal needs to be, even if they forget it in a minute, give them the best minute you can. In that way, that's one of the ways we're honored to have a memory care. That's one of the ways we're honored to have this dementia specialist come in and offer a support group of, you can love your loved one. You can grieve the love that your loved one is not behaving the same way. But you can have peace knowing they're still there and that you can still have moments with them and still enjoy their company.
Absolutely. And it means the world to them to have you there, whether or not it may seem that way or not, for sure. Absolutely. So Rosewood, if I'm in Fort Oglethorpe, because that's where it's located, right off the Battlefield Parkway, right?
Right off the Battlefield.
So what's that corner there? Is that Mineral Avenue or Mac Smith? Because, Mac Smith kind of comes and bleeds down in there. But what is that? It's a corner of Battlefield Parkway and
Fort Town Drive.
Fort Town Drive. That's right. We have the Fort Town Apartments in there. So if you're coming down Battlefield Parkway, before you get to the Lowe's, it's right there on the right. You've got, right there, Fort Town Road. It's right there at the corner. How large is your facility?
We can have up to 130 people with us.
Okay.
It sounds like it's pretty big, but the way that everything's structured, it's honestly just a giant circle. So we have our communities separated out, and then there's just this big circle so that nobody ever gets lost. Everybody just has neighbors all in a big circle, and then we all get down and eat dinner together. and also participate in activities and fun stuff like that.
Yeah, so the facility sounds fantastic. And look, when you reached out to me, um, it was one of those things where I thought, this is something we need to talk about in the community. And you're having a free event. I thought this would be a great time to do it, to come and to ask questions. It's just one of those things where I can tell you from experience, if I had known, I would have gone to something like this. So would my sister, because we didn't have any clue we were going to be in the position we were in. But the reality is, we're here. And so, to be able to get information or ask questions to figure out how to navigate all those things, typically what we think about is what? Well, does mom and dad have funeral arrangements? Do we know what their wishes are there? Those things. Do they have life insurance or not? Those are basic questions that a lot of times we deal with, but the care part, we had no clue. We just assumed, like most folks, that mom and dad are going to live in their house that they've lived in. They lived in that house since 1978. We just thought that was going to be, they were there till they weren't, and that would be kind of how that would end. But the story didn't end that way at all, and we just didn't have a clue it was going to be that way. And we had no roadmap. We didn't know. And there's a lot of folks out there that are in that same situation. They're struggling right now to try to figure it out. And then financial is that financial piece that keeps a lot of folks from like, I'm not going to be able to afford that. When the reality is, when you kind of go through it and you figure it out, that between insurance or between Medicare, Medicaid, all these other pieces come together, that there is a solution there, but it takes a little effort. But the effort a lot of times is the obstruction as well, because you don't know where to start. And so I would advise anybody, this is a great place to just go get answers, to go. Now, listen, I'm going to be blunt. I'm not getting paid from Rosewood. This is not a paid advertisement or anything like that. This was just me thinking, hey, I'm going through this right now. When you reached out to me, you didn't know that. And I thought, you know what? This is something that I would have needed. And I know I'm not alone in this. And so that's why I wanted to do this today, because it was perfect timing. August the 28th, 6:30 p.m. at Rosewood on Battlefield Parkway. If you think you're in this need, come down there, go to this event, and get some answers to some questions. It's not going to cost you anything but some time, but it will be time well spent if you're like me and my sister and think, oh my goodness, we may be in this situation.
And we'll definitely feed you too. So come on, we'll give you some food. The only thing we need from you is an RSVP. And RSVP is very easy. All you have to do is call Rosewood. You can Google it, or I can give you the number very quickly. It's 706-866-4443. And that's it. Just let me know you're coming, and I'll make sure I have a plate for you.
Yeah, so let them know, RSVP, it's, here again, August the 28th at 6:30. And Emily here, just 706-866-4443. If you were looking for the pen after she gave that number, you don't have to rewind it now. You got the pen, you can write that down. I think it's time well worth spent. It's just something.
Just don't wait until you're in a pinch, because I can't tell you how many people give us a call and either no one ever plans for it. It happens whether because it's a fall, a stroke, or dementia. The biggest thing is if you prepare for it, you can adequately approach it. But don't wait until it's too late for you to make the decisions for you and for your loved one, because I promise you they sneak up on you without any warning and without any grace.
They do. You're exactly right. And that's what I was saying. We think about it in terms of burial situations. Maybe mom and dad have a plot over here at X Cemetery. We kind of know where that's going and all that. But that's like the last step. And a lot of us didn't realize there was going to be a few steps in between that we had to be taking, and we didn't prepare for them. And I think the biggest thing you were talking about earlier, which is so true, is wouldn't you want to have these conversations now while they're able to participate and they're able to say, I do see this and somewhere I could see myself, and yes, and what are these questions? And then you can ask them financially, these are the things we're going to have to do to get you to this point. Do you understand, and are you okay with that? I wished I could have had those conversations with my parents when they were both in a situation where they could have participated, because they weren't in a situation to participate by the time we got to that. And that was the sad part, for sure. So, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great. You know, some episodes run a little longer than others, and this one was right about 35 minutes, which is great. I think that was, the amount of time was perfect for the message. It needed to be, and I'm sure we'll have lots of comments from folks that are going right through this, and help us in the comments down there. Listen, in the comments, come down there and tell us your stories, and you know, that's what makes us all stronger, is everybody participating. So thanks for watching. Emily, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, and until next time, have a great week, Catoosa.
Yeah, you and I as one will always be better than